Boston is home to a collection of theaters that have stood for more than a century. Every evening, these buildings are packed with thousands of people, generating a massive wall of sound, applause, music, and the collective energy of a packed house. Then, the performance ends. The audience leaves, the doors lock, and the sensory experience drops to absolute zero. The massive, ornate auditoriums sit in near total silence. The only people left inside are a handful of overnight workers, security guards walking their rounds, and stagehands prepping the rigging for the next day's show. When you stand alone in one of these rooms, the isolation feels heavy. Generations of actors and audiences have poured high-stakes emotion into these physical structures, and people who work the graveyard shift quickly realize that energy doesn't simply vanish when the stage lights power down. Take a security guard named Michael. During a rainy Thursday shift, his 1:40 a.m. patrol required him to walk directly across the center of the main stage. Out there, surrounded by thousands of dark, empty seats, you are completely exposed. As he reached the center mark, a single overhead spotlight clicked on by itself, bathing him in a circle of light. This is a heavy piece of physical stage equipment, designed to be manually operated by a technician. Michael assumed a crew member was running late-night tests. Then he heard the sound of polite, distant applause coming from the dark auditorium. He looked out and saw a woman standing next to him in the beam of light. She wore an antique stage costume, bowing slowly to the empty room. The light flicked off, and the stage was immediately empty. The next morning, Michael asked the technical crew to check the lighting system logs. The computer confirmed zero power had been drawn by any spotlight during his shift. The system logs showed no record of electrical activity, yet Michael had witnessed a performance that required a circuit. The theater appeared to be holding on to a specific high-energy memory, replaying a moment that existed entirely outside of the building's modern hardware. While the main stage is expansive, the architecture behind the curtains is tightly compressed. The backstage area is a maze of windowless maintenance corridors and narrow dressing rooms that cut off all outside sound. Olivia, a costume assistant for a touring production, was organizing wardrobe items late into the night. In dressing room 7, the only sound was the low hum of the vanity mirror bulbs, with heavy rows of hanging costumes against her back. As she sorted garments, she caught movement in the vanity glass. An older man was sitting in the reflection, carefully applying stage makeup. Olivia spun around, but the physical chair behind her was completely empty. Before she could process the empty seat, the dressing room door slammed shut on its own. When she finally pried it open and looked back, every single costume hanging on the rack had been physically rotated to face the mirror. In dressing room 7, the haunting evolved into something tangible. The presence demonstrated physical mass, possessing the intent required to bolt a heavy door and systematically manipulate every object in the room. The most dangerous spaces in these buildings sit high above the floor. The overhead lighting catwalks are complex grids of exposed metal scaffolding suspended in the dark. Around 3 a.m., a lighting technician named Daniel climbed up to inspect a malfunctioning fixture. He was balancing on a narrow grate, nearly 100 feet over the pitch-black void of the main stage. As he walked the length of the platform, he heard the sharp metallic clang of footsteps echoing directly behind him. He immediately froze. The sound stopped instantly. When he took another step, the heavy tread resumed, matching his pace exactly. Daniel turned around to confront whoever was up there with him, but the catwalk stretched out completely empty. Down at the far end of the scaffolding, a massive spotlight began to slowly rotate on its axis, swiveling through the dark until the glass lens pointed directly at him. Daniel immediately climbed down and requested to see the security footage the next morning. The video showed him walking alone along the catwalk, but right behind him, the thick metal grating was visibly bending downward under the weight of an invisible mass. The bowing woman on the main stage was a blind recording playing on a loop. The entity on the catwalk was fully aware of Daniel, actively stalking him through its territory with calculated precision. The theater management quietly ordered dressing room 7 to be permanently padlocked. Daniel finished out the week's production, then resigned. He never accepted another overnight shift. These historic theaters were masterfully engineered to be architectural time capsules. Every curved wall and heavy curtain was deliberately designed to trap sound, capture attention, and perfectly preserve the energy of a performance. By performing exactly as they were built to, these structures might actually work too well. The physical space perfectly preserves these artistic echoes, locking the performer's routines into an endless nightly loop long after the curtain falls. If you ever find yourself lingering in the back rows of an empty theater after the doors lock, never applaud unless you are part of the intended audience.